Life was normal. And then a pandemic came. The busyness of everyday life changed in an instant. Where once there was busyness, now there was quiet, and silence descended. A silence which was touched by concern and worry about what was going to happen and what was going to happen next. A silence which punctuated the life of a whole nation, indeed a whole world, as the pandemic took hold. Silence. This place that was once busy became quiet and still and empty. And that's the story of so many places. The sound of silence. Hello, silence, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. The sound of silence, a fearful silence. But then in the words of another song, it's talked about silence as being golden. A golden place, a place where there is comfort and hope. Silence. What kind of silence do you look for? A silence in which there is hope, in which you can reflect and think how best to be. Or is your silence a fearful silence, the sound of silence? I like to watch Call the Midwife every Sunday evening, maybe you do too. And in the middle of the programme often we find that nuns of the order in the night time going into the still hours through the early hours until dawn in the great silence where they shouldn't be disturbed because that is the time for them to rest and to pray. What do you do in your times of silence? Is silence a friend or is it a threat? I'm a musician, maybe you are too. I love to hear the rise and fall of the arpeggios and listen for the wonderful music that comes, maybe a great organ piece, or maybe it's a still piece played on an oboe or a clarinet. But what makes the music so good is the silence between the notes, those rests where we are forced to stop before the music commences again. Silence can be beautiful. So in these days of quiet and reflection, as we look forward, what does silence mean for you? There's not much said about silence in the Bible, but one verse which is really helpful is a verse in the first letter of Peter. He was a leader in the early church. Not long after the time of Jesus, a friend of Paul, the guy who was blinded by the light on the road to Damascus. And Peter writes to early Christians saying, "By doing good, you may put to silence the ignorance of the foolish." That's the kind of silence I long for. The silence that's brought about by people seeing good being done and them left gasping in awe. Hello, silence. My old friend, I've come to talk with you again. I hope that silence might become a friend for you in which you put to silence the ignorance of the foolish by doing good. That's what Jesus would have done. What will you do with the silence in which you find yourself?